Yesterday, I briefly covered the 8 states without freedom. Today, I will provide a more in-depth analysis. 3 lower realms for hell beings, hungry ghosts, and animals. Beings in the 3 lower realms constantly face torment from heat, cold, hunger, thirst, and other forms of suffering as a result of their past negative actions. This leaves them with no opportunity to practice the Dharma. As human beings, we cannot see the scenes in the hells and the Preta, hungry ghost realms, but we can see animals with our own eyes. No animal, even just for one day, can commit virtuous deeds by first taking refuge in generating bodhicitta and later dedicating merit. Therefore, we can infer by comparison and know that hell beings and hungry ghosts are even less likely to have the opportunity for hearing or practicing the Dharma. The summer heat and winter cold in the human realm are nothing compared to the heat and cold of the hells. During the exceptionally cold winters or hot summers, we humans may have neither the drive nor the courage for the practice of Dharma, let alone the hell beings. Hunger and thirst in the human realm are nothing compared to those in the Preta realm. If we don't eat anything just for one day, we humans don't feel like practicing, let alone hungry ghosts who have nothing to eat for tens of thousands of years. Animals also have no opportunity to practice the Dharma because they undergo enslavement and lack the mental capacity. Therefore, we must understand that the inhabitants of the 3 lower realms have no opportunity to practice the Dharma, as stated in the application of mindfulness of the sacred Dharma. How can they hear the Dharma? Animals attack each other. Pretas suffer from hunger and thirst. Hells are full of torments. This sutra clearly describes the sufferings in the 3 lower realms. We should constantly aspire not to have a bad rebirth. Among all the inhabitants of the 3 lower realms, being an animal is the least bad. Yet, once we are reborn in the animal realm, the suffering still lasts a very long time. When Anathapindata was building Jetavana Monastery for Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha referred to the ants on the ground, telling him, "They were ants since the era of Buddha Vipassi. They were reborn again and again as ants, and have experienced the birth of 7 Buddhas in total. Today they are still ants." Once Sariputra entered into samadhi, a state of meditative concentration, examining a pigeon's past and future. He saw the bird had been reborn repeatedly as a pigeon in the past 80,000 great kalpas, and would remain a pigeon in the future 80,000 great kalpas. Sariputra couldn't see when the pigeon started and would end its rebirth as a pigeon. Buddha Shakyamuni told Sariputra, apart from the lifetimes discernible by Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, during which this being was and will be reborn as a pigeon, it will continue to take rebirth as a pigeon for kalpas as countless as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. After its negative karmas are exhausted, this pigeon will then take continuous rebirth in the 5 realms, until finally it will be reborn as a human. After being a human for 500 lives, it will finally have the opportunity to encounter the Buddha's teachings and eventually the capacity to practice the Dharma. It is so difficult for animals to attain a human rebirth, let alone hungry ghosts and hell beings. Once a being falls into a lower realm, not for 1 life or 2 lives, but for innumerable kalpas, this being won't have the opportunity to hear the Dharma. Without hearing the Dharma, this being cannot attain liberation, and thus will be deeply trapped in the sufferings of samsara for innumerable kalpas. A wise person should carefully reflect on each instruction in the words of my perfect teacher. It is only through repetitive contemplation that the Dharma practice becomes effective. Otherwise, even if the Guru gives you pointing out instructions of the highest teachings in the Chan school or Vajrayana, such as the nature of mind or the luminous and uncompounded nature of everything, which may sound inspiring to you at the moment, but the feeling or experience won't last. It's like pouring hot water on a frozen lake on a winter day. The ice surface may start to melt, but soon it will freeze again. Why is it so? This is because you haven't established a solid foundation. Thus, your so-called awakening experience is unstable and will not remain in your mind stream. Therefore, please practice preliminaries well, and after your Dharma foundation is solid, then proceed to the higher teachings and practices. Only by doing so can you truly gain benefits. However, nowadays many people are doing the opposite. When the guru is giving highest teachings, people flock to the Dharma hall. But when the guru is teaching ngondro, the preliminaries, people disappear. The highest teachings in this case won't benefit such people. Some practitioners rarely contemplate the 8 states without freedom and think it is very easy for them to attain higher realization. It is a good aspiration, but without nourishing and softening their stubborn minds with the nectar of the Dharma, the states of realization won't arise. Therefore, I hope you'll practice the preliminaries well. You should keep contemplating the sufferings of the 3 lower realms until true conviction arises. Otherwise, when a Dharma teacher asks you to meditate on the sufferings of the lower realms, you may just practice that briefly and generate a few ordinary thoughts, which is definitely not enough. A practitioner must internalize the Dharma and eventually develop unwavering conviction. Exactly what kind of conviction? The practitioner must think, I must not fall into the 3 lower realms, otherwise I will never have the opportunity to hear the true Dharma, let alone practice it. If you can give birth to such a conviction, it means you have developed aversion to the 3 lower realms. Barbarians refers to those living in the 32 border countries, such as Lokatha. It says in some scriptures that there are 108 border countries or places, and if the smallest border places are counted in, there are a total of 1,200. Nevertheless, many tribes and ethnic groups in the world don't believe in Buddhism. Moreover, some of them have many pernicious customs. For example, they regard harming others as an act of devotion and taking a life as a virtuous action. These are truly inappropriate behaviors. Buddhists embrace harmony with other religions and non-religious groups for the sake of unity with humanity. However, when encountering conflicting views of non-Buddhists, we Buddhists should keep a clear mind and uphold our own views. Some Buddhists lump all religions together. This is not right because the Buddha says, those who harm others are not Shramanas. Some Buddhists comment on many occasions that all major religions are the same because they all promote virtues. Regarding virtuous conduct, some other spiritual groups engage in charitable deeds, such as building hospitals, and these are really good, and we Buddhists also encourage such charity. But it is not reasonable to assume that these belief systems in Buddhism share the same views just because of their shared commitment on charitable deeds. As far as the Tibetan region is concerned, Mipham Rinpoche mentioned that there had been historical conflicts between Buddhism and Bon, the ancient indigenous religion of Tibet. Bon and Buddhism have fundamentally different views, so people shouldn't confuse one with the other. For example, Bon practitioners turn a prayer wheel counterclockwise, as they also do when circumambulating a sacred mountain. Buddhists, however, believe counterclockwise action destroys merit, so when a Buddhist notices an electronic prayer wheel is turning counterclockwise, he will immediately adjust it. Therefore, it is worth further examination if one assumes that Buddhism and other belief systems share the same view, meditation, action, and fruition without having any divergence, just because of certain similarities between them. It is important not to construct various justifications merely to serve one's own purpose. Buddhists shouldn't blend our own views with those of non-Buddhists, but at the same time, Buddhists shouldn't hold grudges against or turn their backs on non-Buddhists, who, after all, are sentient beings. Guided by the aspiration of bodhicitta, we should treat all beings impartially and try to bring benefit to them. However, we shouldn't treat their views impartially, thinking it is equally acceptable to study our own texts and their texts. We shouldn't think that pursuing Buddhism and other belief systems is equally good. Some people think Buddhism and other belief systems are the same, so they persuade many Buddhists to forget Buddhism and join other spiritual groups. I don't agree with them at all. Each Buddhist should clearly know the benefits of taking refuge in the Three Jewels and the fault of banishing the Dharma. Every one of us should have a clear understanding of this issue. Therefore, when it comes to significant matters, we should sharpen our wisdom eyes of discernment and handle them with utmost care. These people living in border regions have human forms, but their minds lack the right orientation, and they are unable to attune themselves to the Dharma. In particular, while some cities in the world seem extremely prosperous and bustling, the vicious deeds committed there are extremely prevalent. Thus, such cities can also be considered barbarian places. Don't think that a barbarian place or a border region only refers to an underdeveloped rural territory, so that major cities like Beijing or Shanghai are excluded from the list. In fact, one should distinguish between a border region in terms of the Dharma and a geographic border region. A region other than India is considered a geographic border region, whereas a region that lacks fourfold assemblies or brings no benefit to the fourfold assemblies living there is a border region in terms of the Dharma. Thus, some urban dwellers who dress well and eat nicely but know nothing about the Dharma are therefore considered barbarians. Inheriting such harmful customs as marrying their mothers from their forefathers, they live in a manner that is completely contrary to the practice of Dharma. Such customs still exist in some places in eastern India. For example, in 2006, a teenage boy named Robin decided to marry a mountain in order to bring relief to his injured mother. On the wedding day, Robin, dressed in traditional groom attire, along with over 400 villagers, walked 3 kilometers to the Lakshmi mountain. As they climbed the mountain, they sprinkled water along the way. At the mountaintop, Robin placed a floral wreath on the bride's head. With this act, the Lakshmi mountain became Robin's wife. According to an anthropologist at Ranchi University, marriages between a human and an animal or an inanimate object are not uncommon in some tribes. Barbarians are capable of committing all sorts of misdeeds. They have human form, but their conduct is against the Dharma, ethics, and morality. So it's quite rare for them to believe in Buddhism and practice the Dharma. A man I know often says, "I grew up among non-Buddhists, yet I am so fortunate to have believed in Buddhism. Especially, what I pursue is Tibetan Buddhism, which excels in hearing, contemplating, and meditating. Of more than 100 of my classmates in primary school, middle school, and university, I am the only one who believes in Buddhism. How fortunate am I?" His words do make sense. Many people believe that virtuous actions are driven by superstitious motives. Studying Dharma is an act of escaping from reality, and vices are worth pursuing. Therefore, all their actions are negative, and they are particularly adept at harmful activities such as killing insects and hunting wild animals. Sometimes it seems that just having one meal, let alone a lifetime of wrongdoings, can leave some people deeply stuck in the lower realms for many kalpas. The wrongdoings committed by many people, especially those who are rich, are terrible. Some rich people are very demanding about each meal. Just eating meat is not enough. They want live carp, lobster, pangolin, and even monkey brain. This shows that hell realms are not somewhere beyond human vision. When you visit a restaurant serving living beings, you see hells in the human realm. Those diners, however pretty or handsome they may be, are no different from the henchmen of hell. Their teeth are covered with animals' blood. To satisfy those people's craving for food, many animals lost their precious lives. Are we moving toward a better society or regressing? This is a question worthy of our reflection. Many people praise our economic advancement. Once we dressed in rags, and now we are clothed nicely. Once we lived in makeshift cabins, and now we reside in elegant tall buildings. As shown on TV and in newspapers, many people applaud how wonderful these advances are. However, we often ignore how broken our spiritual world is behind the fast-growing material world. Putting aside for a moment the extraordinary ideals of compassion in Mahayana Buddhism, many people have abandoned even the humanistic morality of filial piety to parents and respect for teachers. Children are addicted to online games, and adults pursue hedonistic indulgences. We are living in a crazy world. Some Tibetans' conduct is also very disappointing. 2 days ago, an acquaintance called me, asking whether I could lend him money to save his life. I asked what had happened. He told me he had lost over 1.5 million Chinese yuan in a month to gambling. He used to earn a salary of several thousand Chinese yuan per month and lived a happy life, but then he became obsessed with gambling, which messed up his life. He gave me a good reason. After all, I am also a sentient being. Can you use the life release fund to save my life? I flatly refused, saying, the fund is not used to pay off gambling debts, that is for sure. I know many people in several nearby towns, including some civil servants, have taken out usurious loans for gambling. If they borrowed 10,000 Chinese yuan one day, they had to pay back 15,000 Chinese yuan the next morning. If they failed to pay back, the interest rate increased exponentially. Driven by their greed, many mindless borrowers set aside the ramifications and take out a usurious loan. Then the interest multiplies exponentially and the debt grows rapidly like a snowball sliding downhill. Some people cannot pay back their debts, so they run away. For the rest of their lives, they live in hiding on the edge of fear. Even worse, some lose everything: wealth, career, family, and even their own lives. The stench of moral decay can now be found everywhere. The skylines were less majestic in the past, but people seemed happier with more compassion and contentment. Nowadays, many ignorant persons, even some so-called Buddhists, simply mimic others' wrongdoings, destroying all their merit and happiness. The so-called developments, such as modernization, industrialization, and technologization, also bring problems of environmental pollution, ecological imbalance, and moral decay. It is worth contemplating whether our society is progressing or regressing. If we embrace the views of nihilists who reject the law of karma, one day, when our negative actions have caused unfavorable outcomes, our regrets will come too late. Nowadays, when people get together, they may just talk about weather, food, travels, or sports. Many of them are not even interested in philosophy, let alone the supreme Dharma. Many people, especially school teachers, used to be well-versed in classic poems from the Tang and Song dynasties. However, today's people, including teachers, think about, how can I get a salary raise? Or so-and-so is quite wealthy, he bought a house and a car, I must surpass him. Their minds are polluted by the three poisons, thus losing their directions in life. They simply have no clue about the Buddha's teachings. Sometimes I have wanted to give teachings, but knowing the situations outside Larungar, I felt a bit discouraged. Although I don't have high states of realization about the great perfection or the great middle way, I dare say I have attained convictions about ngondro practices, including the precious human life and impermanence, thanks to the lineage guru's blessings and to my diligence. Such convictions won't be shaken by anyone. If such a conviction can be transferred to another person's mind, definitely it will benefit the person greatly. Sadly, it is hard to find a qualified Dharma recipient. I do want to transfer the convictions and states of realization to others, but few are willing to listen to the teaching. Even if they hear the teaching, he won't put it into practice. Instead, he will occupy himself with trifles and won't bother reviewing the teaching. If this is the case, how can he grasp the meanings in the teaching? Without understanding the teaching, how can he succeed in practicing the Dharma? There are more and more signs of decay during this degenerate age. Even some monastics are not behaving properly. Never mind. I'd better stop here. I am not here hosting a session to criticize others. All in all, barbarians are very good at wrongdoings. Many things they do are unwholesome. Many of them fall into lower realms immediately upon death. For such people, there is no opportunity to practice the Dharma. The long-lived gods. The long-lived gods are that celestial beings who are absorbed in a state of mental blankness. As it is said in Jamyang Loter Wangpo's commentary on the treasury of Abhidharma, the sphere of long-lived gods is located around the fourth heaven, inhabited by the deities of great fruits in Rupatu, the world of form. Beings born in this sphere remain in a state of mental blankness, like a frozen fish, and perceive nothing for 500 kalpas, or 80,000 great kalpas. Marmots in Tibetan regions spend 3 or 4 months in retreat underground. These animals are also free from all mental activities, but they still breathe. On winter mornings, frost can be found around some burrows' entrances, which means a marmot retreatant resides there. Some people just sit every day and meditate with a blank state of mind, engaging in no other good deeds. It is fine if this is helpful to their attainment of liberation, but sometimes it's worth an in-depth examination on the real value of their meditation. It is beneficial for practitioners of the Chan school and Pure Land school in Chinese Buddhism to integrate the systematic teachings and trainings of Tibetan Buddhism, such as the step-by-step cultivation of renunciation or bodhicitta, into their practice while keeping their own legacies and traditions. Hearing this, someone may wonder, are you trying to woo people? Is it a way for you to convert me? To be honest, such an intention has never even appeared in my dreams. It's just that I have been studying the Dharma for so many years that I am quite aware of the obstacles a practitioner may encounter. Such obstacles are more likely to appear during the degenerate era, so I really wish different schools or lineages can learn from each other. As documented in the biographies of eminent Chan masters, there were many Chan practitioners who attained realization, but later, some pith instructions were not transmitted impeccably to the successors. As a result, those who meditate with their own interpretations of the teachings often go astray on the path. Therefore, it is very necessary to guide one's practices and confirm one's state of realization through hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Otherwise, if practitioners always remain in a state of mental blankness, they may be reborn as a long-lived god. They remain in such states of concentration for great kalpas. However, once the karmic effect that created that condition has exhausted itself, they are reborn in the lower realms due to their wrong views. Some gods are absorbed in a state of mental blankness, so they lack any opportunity to practice the Dharma. Other gods overindulge in hedonistic pleasures, so they don't have time to practice. Some urban dwellers in Han areas start to embrace hedonistic lifestyles once they get wealthier. They seem to live heavenly lives, but their hedonism negatively impacts their Dharma practice. Here is a Buddhist story about the hedonistic gods. During the Buddha's time, healer Jivaka, the physician of the Buddha, the Sangha, and the king, took refuge in the 3 jewels in front of Maudgalyayana. After his death, Jivaka was reborn in the heaven of the 33. Once, Maudgalyayana ascended to this heaven to seek medical suggestions from Jivaka about one of his disciples' illness. When Maudgalyayana arrived, it happened that the gods were entering the Garden of Bliss, so he stood by the road and waited. No god looked at Maudgalyayana. When Jivaka arrived, he remained seated in his elegant chariot, waved only one hand to Maudgalyayana, then passed by immediately. Although he was a great arhat, Maudgalyayana still felt a bit upset, thinking, "Why did my own disciple treat me this way? I've come all the way from the human realm to the god realm, But Jivaka doesn't even bother to welcome me properly. He simply waved to me and left. Maudgalyayana then stopped Jivaka's chariot with his magic power. Jivaka had no choice but to exit the chariot and bow to Maudgalyayana. Upon hearing his teacher's scolding, Jivaka protested, "I didn't mean it. We gods are busy indulging ourselves and having fun every day. You saw the other gods didn't even greet you. It is because I used to be your disciple in the human realm that I tried my very best to greet you by waving my hand. Life in the human realm is nothing near that in the God realm, but whenever possible, some people will choose to indulge. Watching a TV program today, singing karaoke tomorrow, visiting a park the day after tomorrow, traveling to tourist attractions a few days later. They are constantly distracted by such activities, so they never find an opportunity to practice the Dharma. Some other people feel the human realm is full of suffering, so they aspire to be reborn in the God realm. But enjoyment in the God realm is not real liberation, so such a rebirth brings no solid meaning. Please refrain from having such an aspiration. Tirthakas, those with wrong views. The term wrong views generally refers to eternalist and nihilist beliefs, which are views that go against and lie outside the teachings of the Buddha. Eternalists believe in the permanent existence of a creator god and Indras, whereas nihilists believe that all things just arise by themselves, so there are no rebirth, no karma, no three jewels, and no four noble truths. Such views corrupt our minds and prevent us from cultivating trust in the authentic Dharma to the extent that we no longer have the opportunity to practice it. In the Tibetan region, because Padmasambhava entrusted the protection of the land to the 12 Tenma, the Tirthakas' wrong views have not really gained any significant foothold. Once Sakya Pandita had a debate with a Brahmin Shastri named Trokche Gapo. They too reached a deal. If Sakya Pandita was defeated, he would abandon Buddhism and convert to Hinduism. If Trokche Gapo was defeated, he would abandon Hinduism and convert to Buddhism. In the end, Trokche Gapo lost the debate. Sakya Pandita then decided to bring Trokche Gapo to Tibet. When they crossed the border between Nepal and Tibet, Trokche Gapo hesitated, saying, "I'd better not visit Tibet, otherwise the 12 Tenma won't let me in." Sakya Pandita assured him, "It's fine. You are coming with me, so you should be all okay." Yet when they approached Tibet, Trokche Gapo suddenly vomited blood and died. Some also say he was killed by lightning. Sakya Pandit then took Trokche Gapo's braid back to Sakya Monastery. His braid is still reportedly kept in the monastery. With the protection of the 12 Tenma, non-Buddhist religions have not been able to penetrate the Tibetan region. Many masters, including the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche and other eminent masters residing elsewhere, have composed prayers to the 12 Tenma of Tibetan Buddhism, which are often recited in monasteries. Although Tibetans at large are not as pure as before, and there are both eternalists and nihilists on the land, other religious worship places and missionaries still cannot penetrate the Tibetan region. In comparison, cities elsewhere in the Han area are almost occupied by various non-Buddhist religions. That Buddhism has been flourishing in the Tibetan region is attributed to the inconceivable protection of the 12 Tenma and other Dharma protectors. Buddhism in the Tibetan region is extraordinary. It would be a great pity if it was tainted by other religions and sects, so we should keep praying to Dharma protectors. Since all Tibetans believe in Buddhism, every one of them, be it a child, adult, or a senior, has the habit of chanting mantras and praying to the three jewels. Buddhism is no longer an individual belief in the Tibetan region. It has been integrated into all aspects of Tibetan culture. The Tibetan outlook on life is embedded with the compassion of Buddhism, and the influence of Buddhism can be seen everywhere in their lives. A place like the Tibetan region is indeed very rare. When a non-Buddhist visits the Tibetan region, even just for a quick tour to Lhasa, his mind may get purified. For example, Recently, a few professors visited Larung Gar. They previously strongly opposed Buddhism, but after the trip, they completely changed their views toward Buddhism. Such a changeover is also ascribed to the blessings of the Dharma Center and the Dharma protectors. Thus, non-Buddhist religions can barely survive in the Tibetan region. However, anyone whose understanding is like that of the Tirthakas, and contrary to that of the authentic Dharma and authentic masters, will thereby be deprived of the opportunity to practice according to those true teachings. Nevertheless, those who hold the views of Tirthakas, which go against the authentic Dharma and the teachings of true teachers, will thereby have no opportunity to practice according to those true teachings. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche said, "Once a person's mind is spoiled by wrong views, then however great qualities the teacher has, this person won't be able to see them." Within the three worlds, there is no teacher more qualified than Buddha Shakyamuni, who has perfect freedom and realization. However, in the eyes of Purna-Kashapa, who was deluded by wrong views, the Buddha had 9 faults and 18 ugly marks, instead of 32 excellent signs and 80 exemplary features. This is similar to how a patient with jaundice sees a white conch shell as yellow. Similarly, in the eyes of those with wrong views, gurus can be greedy, hateful, jealous, arrogant, or stingy. Such people only see the faults but not the great qualities of the guru. Even if they stay close to the guru for years, it brings no benefit but harm to them. Once a person told me, "I always find faults in you, so I am leaving Larung Gar tomorrow." I responded, "You don't have to wait until tomorrow. You'd better leave today." Seriously, he didn't have to stay longer. I am not saying I have the characteristics of a qualified teacher. I remember this verse from Longchen Pa's The Precious Treasury of Pith Instructions. It is a contradiction to want to be a teacher if you yourself do not yet have the qualifications of a disciple. I don't think I am even qualified as a disciple, let alone being a qualified teacher. But the Dharma itself has great blessing power, so my teaching may be of some benefit to others. It's similar to a deaf person who cannot hear but can make others happy when playing a musical instrument. As said by the Buddha, even if the teacher has bad characteristics, his Dharma teaching is still meaningful to those faithful listeners. This is the rationale behind my teaching. When you follow a teacher, you should examine your state of mind. If you don't have pure perception, however long you follow the teacher, it may be of no benefit to you. For example, the monk Sunaksatra served as the Buddha's attendant for 25 years, some also say 24 years, and yet he lacked even the slightest faith and held only wrong views. Sunaksatra saw everything the Buddha did as deceitful, so one day he told the Buddha, "Apart from that light around your body 6 feet wide, never have I seen in 24 years as your servant even a sesame seed's worth of special qualities in you. As for the Dharma, I know as much as you, and I will no longer be your servant." After saying this, Sunaksatra left the Buddha. 7 days later, he ended up being reborn as a hungry ghost in a flower garden. The 1,000 Buddhas of the Good Kalpa have told and will tell Sunaksatra's story. Only after all 1,000 Buddhas have appeared in the world will Sunaksatra take rebirths into the hell realms and eventually be reborn as a human again. As you see, the consequences of wrong views are very serious, and those with wrong views have no opportunity to practice the Dharma. Now that we are free from wrong views, we should often pray to the Guru and to the Three Jewels, wishing that right views always arise in our minds. Birth in a dark kalpa, being born in a dark kalpa, refers to the rebirth in a period when there is no Buddha. In a universe where no Buddha has appeared, nobody has even heard of the Three Jewels. As there is no Buddha's teachings, there is no opportunity to practice the Dharma. Now we are born in a bright kalpa when the Buddha appeared and turned Dharma wheels 3 times, and the Dharma still exists. In this bright kalpa, we have the opportunity to practice the Dharma. Being born deaf and mute, those who were born deaf and mute face challenges in effectively listening to the teachings, expounding them, reflecting on them, and putting them into practice. The term deaf-mute usually refers to a speech impairment. It becomes a condition that leads to the lack of opportunity for the Dharma when the usual human ability to use and understand language is absent. Consequently, this category also includes those whose cognitive impairment makes them unable to understand the teachings, thus depriving them of the opportunity to practice the Dharma. Some Dharma students think they are unintelligent, but if they try, they can still understand a bit. For example, how to chant the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, or the name of Amitabha, or which virtuous things they should do. In these cases, they still have the opportunity to practice the Dharma. Through the above analysis, I hope you fully understood what the 8 states without freedom are. This understanding is important to us practitioners. If a practitioner has no freedom and opportunity to practice the Dharma and spends their whole day on the 8 worldly concerns, then they surely cannot attain realization in their short lifespan as a human. Shantideva says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, this supreme freedom of a human life, so long awaited, now at last attained. Reflecting always thus, maintain your mind as steady as Sumeru, king of mountains. Longchenpa also says in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, my friends, your human form endowed with precious freedoms and advantages, of all the 6 migrations, is the one most difficult to find. Like blind men who have chanced upon a treasure of great price, with joy achieve your benefit and happiness. Therefore, we should be demanding of ourselves. Since it takes innumerable lives and kalpas to finally obtain a human form, we must appreciate this precious human life as much as possible and use it to gain benefits for our liberation. Now that we have a precious human life, we should earnestly seek Dharma teachings. In the same way, a patient seeks treatment when they finally meet a good doctor. The Buddha says, like a patient meets a good doctor, one should listen to the authentic Dharma wholeheartedly. Even if you only attend 1 Dharma class every day, the merit is already incredible. The opportunity to hear the teachings may not last long. Everyone has their own affinity with the Dharma. Those with insufficient merits may only have the chance to listen to teachings for 1 or 2 years, instead of 20 or 30 years. Therefore, for the sake of benefiting this life and future lives, we must appreciate the opportunity and try to overcome all difficulties and obstacles. The biggest enemy of Dharma study is slackness, a state of laziness. Application of mindfulness of the sacred Dharma states, to attain happiness for the present and the future, one must avoid slackness. Those lazy and lax people are no different than a dog. I always remain cautious about slackness, so I'm willing to give more teachings regardless of fatigue or sickness. Thus, I persist in giving teachings almost every day. During my teaching sessions, I also try to arrange other virtuous practices, such as reciting the sadhana of Buddha Shakyamuni and the prayer of good actions. After my oral teaching is over, I do prostrations with Sangha members. I feel content after doing all these things. During my teaching sessions, I am obliged to do wholesome deeds. On the days when I am not teaching, I practice by myself at home, but it takes stronger willpower to recite the prayer of good actions and to prostrate on my own. Therefore, I always wish I could at least give 1 teaching per day so that we can conduct wholesome deeds all together. How delightful it is!